Good morning and welcome back to Luke Locker Ministry. Today we're going to be looking at 1 Timothy 6 verse 10. It reads this: For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. We're going to be looking at the context of this verse, how it applies to us, what it actually means, and we're going to be trying to connect it to other verses and other chapters and other stories. So let's get into it. 1 Timothy 6 verse 10 says, For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. Why? Some people eager for money have wandered from faith and pierced themselves with many greeds. So why is it root of all evil? Well, money can't be the root of all evil. Otherwise, we would be sinning only because of money, for the love of money. A good example of this is Adam and Eve. They sinned by taking the fruit. Why did they do it? It's not because they wanted money, it's because they sinned. They wanted power. So the root of all evil cannot be money or the love of money. What it means is that the love of money can cause all types of evil. It can cause this evil, can cause that evil. This is a warning to people that loving money causes greed, it causes lust, and it causes evil. Let's go to 1 Proverbs verses 10 to 19. My son, if sinful men entice you, do not give in to them. If they say, Come along with us, let's lie and wait for innocent blood. Let's ambush some harmless soul. Let's swallow them alive like the grave, and whole like those who go down to the pit. We will get all sorts of valuable things, and fill our houses with plunder. Cast lots with us, we will share the loot. My son, do not go along with them. Do not set foot on their paths, for their feet rush into evil. They are swift to shed blood. How useless to spread a net, every bird can see it. These men lie in wait for their own blood. They ambush only themselves. Such are the paths of all who are all ill-gotten. It takes away the life of those who get it. So what is these verses trying to tell us? So Proverbs is by Solomon, and it's about wisdom. It talks of two paths, the path of the righteous and the path of the wicked. So these people who are lusting for money, who have the love of money and are doing evil because of it, they have turned away from God and now they're on the wicked path. So what do they do to get the money? They lie and they wait to harm people. People who haven't done things wrong. People who believe in God, who are doing things right. They lie and they take their belongings and they basically kill them. They take them down to the pit. And they take their things. And just to fill this lust that cannot be filled. The love of money cannot be filled. It just continues. And it goes down on a spiral. Proverbs 1 and 2 continues by saying that this path of wickedness, it only turns to a trap for themselves. Because God comes and He judges those. So they will only get what they deserve. This path of wickedness leads to only more evil and disaster for all those. An example of this is movie stars. You watch these Christian movie stars, and they're getting paid heaps of money to do swearing, to use God's name in vain. They've been paying money to sin, to break one of the 10 commandments by Moses and by God. They are sinning by using God's name in vain. And why? Because they love money. Because they're valuing money over God. Money over God. And they're using His name in vain. And it's just really evil. And the path of the wicked is by cheating others. So let's go back to Timothy, 1 Timothy now. And let's talk about the context. Let's read the verse again. For love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. Some people eager for money have wandered away from faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. So, what is the context of 1 Timothy? Well, 1 Timothy was written by Paul. He is sending a letter to Timothy in Ephesus. At this time, Paul was in prison. He was in prison for a reason we'll talk about later, which involves money as well, and the love of money. But Paul is instructing Timothy how to run a church. Where Timothy is, there was trouble in the church. Trouble with the elders, trouble with how people are getting treated. So Paul is teaching Timothy how to build a church and how to keep it safe. So we'll go through Timothy and we'll just read out what the chapters are about. First Timothy is about false teachers in the church. The chapter 2 is about worship. Chapter 3 and 4 are about instruction and how to oversee deacons and priests. Chapter 5 is about how the people of the church should treat widows, elders, and slaves. This time, there was trouble in the church of Ephesus because people were trying to buy their way into the church. Just like the Pharisees who paid for their seats in the church, these people were paying their way into the church and bringing in their false beliefs. So this was poisoning the church and was causing mass destruction in the faith of these people. So Paul is telling him to look out for people who love money. Because what do people who love money do? They don't treat widows right, they don't treat their slaves right, and they don't have respect for the elders. Because they don't want to lose their money, they love the money. So they're not going to help the widows by buying them the stuff they need. They won't help slaves by buying the food and the shelter they need. They won't be with the elders because they just don't want to waste their time. They want to keep earning more money. And this is where we got to watch out. We got to spend time with the Lord and spending all our time trying to get money. And one thing to point out is that the slaves in 1 Timothy are actually different than the slaves right now. When you think of slaves, you think of a person of African descent in the 1800s, 1700s, who is working for minimum wage and is just working for nothing, basically. But slaves at this time were different. Slaves were actually better off than people who were free of slavery. These slaves at this time, especially in like the Romans and all that, and the Jewish, they were taken care of. They were fed, they had shelter, because the master wanted a good slave. If the slave wasn't feeling good, they could just leave. And the other reason is that slaves were usually slaves because they owed someone money. They tried to get a loan to get out of debt, or they just owed someone something. And slave was actually it's like a job, basically. The slaves that bought themselves out of slavery, they were really poor. They had no one to pay them, and they're only doing casual jobs. Casual is when you're just working like part-time, one day at a time. So these people were actually worse off than slaves in most circumstances. So he's telling slaves not to love money, to be humble about their circumstance and not going seek it, because it could end up really bad for them. Because Timothy is taught they were all the same in Christ. Just as all the Christians at that time believed, everyone is one in Christ. The Jews, the Gentiles, and slaves, the widows, the elders, everyone's one in Christ. No one's above the other. So Paul is warning Timothy that people will try and buy their way into the church, buy their way in the ministry, and poison the church, and that they wouldn't help people. They would just be there for money. The last example we're going to be looking at is Judas Iscariot. That's right, the one that betrayed Jesus. So Judas, it was one of the 12 apostles, 12 disciples of Jesus. And in Matthew 26, verse 14 to 16, it says this: the one of the 12, the one called Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priests and asked, "What are you willing to give me if I deliver Jesus over to you?" So they counted out for him 30 pieces of silver. From then on, Judas watched for an opportunity to hand him over. So here we see Judas literally giving the Christ, the one that's supposed to save him, over to the Pharisees, over to the Jews, so they can kill him. He didn't know that they were going to kill him, but the love of money blinds you. It blinds you from the truth. It blinded Judas from what their intentions were. And Judas could have known this easily. They were trying to stone Jesus and they're trying to stone him. He could have known. He could have thought about it a little bit deeper and knew that the love of money was blinding him. But he handed Jesus over and the rest was history. But once he wasn't blinded anymore, once he saw Jesus' death, he went and hung himself. He went and killed himself. He couldn't bear the weight of his sin. Just like he went on that path of wickedness and he realized what was happening once he saw Jesus die. And it's just horrible that this love of money, it blinds you. It consumes you as lust consumes someone, as greed consumes someone. Sin consumes you. How does this apply to us today? Well, we shouldn't love it. We shouldn't love money. We can be okay with money. We should search for money, yes, because money is what we need to live. But we shouldn't take it above God. God is here, and a lot of people are putting money up here. Like it's a livelihood. That's how you're supposed to live. It's not how you're supposed to live. You're supposed to live with God. God is the most important, and if you have Him, you have everlasting life. Just as John 3:16 says. Thank you, guys.